Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today I'll show you how I built the Gates Oil in N-scale from Mud Creek Models. The Model Railroad Club that I'm a member of has a portable N-scale layout that we take to shows with us. We use this to bring attention to our scholarship program. It's not finished yet, and it has a perfect spot on it where Gates Oil will fit right in. We've had a number of kits that were donated to our layout. This all started when I first got the Mud Creek Models barn to put on the layout. Then we got a donation from a friend of mine of the Motrack Depot. At this point we got two donations from Mud Creek Models, their freight house and their general store. And after that we got the Wolfboro Depot donated to us from Motrack Models. And a big thanks to everyone who's donated towards it. Now this latest donation is Gates Oil, and this shows what it looks like. This shows everything that comes in the package. You have your walls and windows and doors, the roof and shingles, strip wood, and detail parts. This shows all the walls laid out. There's actually two buildings. One of them is regular clapboard siding, and the other one is board and batten siding. I first started by bracing all of my walls, the clapboard vertically and the board and batten horizontally. Then I started cleaning all of my corner posts. I use steel wool for this, and it gets off all of the fuzzies. Then I glued and clamped all of the corner posts onto my side walls. For the false front building, I scribed lines on the inside of the wood to match the ones on the outside so they look like individual boards. Then I cut small strips of wood and glued them to the inside to look like the supports that they'd be attached to. Then after I stained the outside of these, I started gluing the walls together. I first did two L shapes and then glued the whole building together, making sure it was square. Now I started working on the other portion. I hadn't stained it yet. I wanted to glue it together first. So first I glued together a couple of walls. Then I glued the entire building together with an internal wall that's going to act as a roof support. Then I checked to see how they fit on the flooring or platform that comes with the kit. I test fit the roof, and I cut a little space out of it because it was going to overhang the edge of the building, and this allowed it to fit perfectly. I started painting the main building. I first applied a driftwood stain to it, and then I mixed up some chalk paint that I have that's parchment with some Liquitex Flow Aid, and this gives me a thin mixture that when I brush it on ends up looking like peeling paint. And it makes a nice effect, but the problem is in N-scale you have to really zoom in with the camera to see it. When you're looking at it with the naked eye, it isn't really obvious. Once that had dried, I started working on the windows. I first gave them a coating of primer, and then I taped off part of the windows and sponged on some red paint. And after that dried, I taped that off and sponged on some white paint. And that gave me the windows and doors for the two different buildings, and it looked like that paint was peeling as well. Now I started putting the doors and windows in the board and batten, but you want to be careful. They shouldn't sit on top of the battens like this. You need to cut away around where the window and door frame are going to be so that the frames actually sit flat against the wood and the battens are actually up against them. Then I went ahead and glued the windows and doors onto the clapboard building, and I put acetate behind all of the windows and doors. Now I glued the clapboard building onto the platform, and after it dried I went ahead and glued the board and batten building onto the platform. Once they were good and dry, I went ahead and stained the platform with Hunterline Blue Gray to give a weathered wood effect. Now I started working on the roofing. The first part I did was the rolled roofing. I gave it a couple of shades of gray and black, and then I like to take it and put it on a piece of rounded wood I have and sandpaper the edge. I like the way this comes out looking when you put all of the rolled roofing in place. It gives it a nice weathered effect. And I started working on some trim that went around the top edge of the board and batten on that building and glued it in place. Now I started working on the roofing for the clapboard building, and I drew my shingling lines on both pieces. And after I glued the cardboard in place, I started applying my shingles. I also put more of the rolled roofing on the little flat extension that comes out. I don't generally like putting shingles on roofing after it's been installed. I prefer to do it flat. But with the valleys on this roofing, it was going to be easier and come out looking better if I put the roofs in place first and then applied the shingling. Then I cut two pieces from the shingling material and used those to cap the ridges of the roof. I'm not sure what they're exactly supposed to be, but after I colored them, they blended right in and seemed to work. I added the gable end under the overhang and glued some trim panels onto the ends of the roof. After washing the detail parts, which are all 3D printed, I sprayed them with a primer. Now for a couple of them, I've been playing with methods of using pan pastels with alcohol to actually paint detail parts. It allows you to get a lot of interesting textures, and you can blend colors really nicely. But it doesn't work for everything. So for most of the other detail parts, I just use traditional painting methods. And this takes a bit of work and a bit of time, but it's worth it in the end. And once I was done painting them, I covered them all with a gray wash to darken them down and make them look a little older. Now I started installing the detail parts, first putting in the stove pipes that came with it, and I also added a plumbing vent. And I put one stove pipe in each building and the plumbing vent in the bigger building. The kit comes with some really nice laser cut signs. I first started by weathering them with driftwood stain, and then I used a Copic marker to go over them. It gives kind of a faded paint look. Then I started gluing them on. I used the gates and the oil sign, but I ended up not using the groceries sign. And I started dabbing rust on the sign sheet that came with the kit. And I also added some Suburban propane signs. The story behind my dealer was going to be that it had been a gas station, but he stopped selling gas. He still was an oil dealer, but he also dealt in Suburban propane. So I cut and painted the supports for the overhang that would have gone over the gas pumps. But on the layout, I'm going to have the concrete pad there, but the gas pumps will have been removed. And I then glued them onto the overhang. And I started gluing on all of the other detail pieces. They had to be attached to the building because it gets removed when we move the layout. Then I used gallery glass to simulate tar around all of the pipes where they come through the roof. Then for the last weathering, I used artist pigments. I enjoy using these. It gives you a lot of options for shading. I have a variety of soft brushes that I use and a number of different colors to select from. And it allows you to apply weathering to your building and to the detail pieces and to other parts such as the roof, overhangs, and stuff like that. And at this point the building's finished. When I added on the layout, I'll put in place a parking lot that has the concrete pad for the gas pumps. And it'll be a nice addition, and I want to thank Mud Creek Models for their donation. And thank you for watching this video.